The rain hammered against the windshield like 1,000 tiny fists, each drop a reminder of everything Marcus had lost. He sat in the driver's seat of his 15-year-old Honda Civic, his short legs barely reaching the pedals, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tight his knuckles had gone white. In the back seat, wrapped in every blanket he owned, his 2 children slept. 7-year-old Emma clutched her stuffed rabbit, the one with the missing ear. 5-year-old Daniel had his thumb in his mouth, something he only did when he was scared, even in sleep. Marcus was a dwarf, standing 3 feet 9 inches tall, and tonight he felt even smaller than that. He felt invisible, worthless. Like the world had looked at him and decided he didn't matter. 3 months ago, he'd had a home, a small apartment, nothing fancy, but it had 2 bedrooms and a kitchen where he'd make pancakes on Sunday mornings. He'd had a job at the warehouse, lifting what he could, organizing what he couldn't, proving every single day that his size didn't define his worth. He'd had a routine. He'd had dignity. Then the company downsized. Last hired, first fired, they'd said, not meeting his eyes. They didn't say it was because he was different, because he needed a step stool to reach the higher shelves, because some of the other workers had complained it wasn't fair that he got special treatment. They didn't have to say it. Marcus had heard the whispers his whole life. The rent came due. Then came due again. His landlord, a woman with painted-on eyebrows and a voice like gravel, had given him 2 weeks. Then 1 week. Then she'd changed the locks while he was out looking for work, piling his belongings in garbage bags on the curb like they were trash, like he was trash. Now they lived in the car. 3 days so far, though Marcus had stopped counting the hours because each one felt like a year. He'd park in different places each night, trying to find spots where no one would knock on the window, where the police wouldn't tell them to move along, where his children could sleep without knowing the truth. During the day, he'd take them to the public library, to the park, to the McDonald's, where he'd buy them each a small fries and let them play in the play place for as long as possible. He'd smile and tell them it was an adventure, that they were camping, that everything was fine. But tonight, Emma had looked up at him with those big brown eyes, so much like her mother's, and asked, "Daddy, why don't we go home?" And Marcus hadn't known what to say. He turned in his seat now, watching them sleep. Emma's hair had gotten so long. He needed to trim it, but scissors cost money, and money was something he didn't have. Daniel's shoes were too small, pinching his little feet, but new shoes would have to wait. Everything would have to wait. A knock on the window made Marcus jump, his heart slamming against his ribs. He turned to see a woman standing in the rain, her hood pulled up, water streaming down her face. She was tall, willowy, with kind eyes that caught the streetlight. In her hands, she held an umbrella and a thermos. Marcus cracked the window an inch, just enough to hear her but not enough to let in the cold. "I'm sorry to bother you," the woman said, her voice gentle. "My name is Sarah. I live in that apartment building right there." She gestured behind her. "I've seen your car here the past couple nights. I thought you might want some hot coffee. And maybe some sandwiches? I made extra." Marcus felt his throat tighten. Shame burned through him, hot and acidic. She knew. This stranger knew what he was, what he'd become. A man who couldn't even provide a roof for his children. "I don't need charity," he said, the words coming out harsher than he intended. Sarah didn't flinch. She just set the thermos and a paper bag on the hood of the car, under the small protection of the overhang they were parked beneath. "It's not charity," she said softly. "It's just coffee and sandwiches, no strings attached. You don't even have to talk to me if you don't want to." She started to walk away, and Marcus felt something crack inside him, something he'd been holding together with pure stubbornness and fear. "Wait!" he called out, his voice breaking. Sarah turned back, rain plastering her hair to her face. Marcus opened the door and stepped out into the storm. He barely came up to her waist, and he saw the moment she registered his height. that flicker in her eyes. But it wasn't disgust or pity. It was just recognition, acknowledgement, and then it was gone, replaced by that same gentle concern. "Thank you," Marcus whispered. Thank you." Sarah smiled, and it was real, reaching all the way to her eyes. "You're welcome. Look, I know this is probably weird, and you don't know me, but I have a basement apartment that's been sitting empty for 2 months. The last tenant moved out, and I haven't had time to find anyone new. It's not much, but it's warm and dry. If you need a place for a few days just until you figure things out—" Marcus stared at her, searching for the catch, for the angle, for the inevitable cruelty he'd learned to expect from strangers. But all he saw was genuine kindness, offered without conditions. "I can't pay you," he said, the words tasting like failure. "Not right now. I'm looking for work, but—" "I'm not asking you to," Sarah interrupted gently. "I'm offering you a place to stay. We can figure out the rest later." "Your kids shouldn't be sleeping in a car, especially not in this weather." Marcus felt hot tears mixing with the cold rain on his face. He thought about Emma asking to go home. He thought about Daniel's 2 small shoes. He thought about how hard he'd been trying to keep them from knowing, from understanding that their father had failed them. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay." Sarah's smile widened. "Follow me. The parking is around back." Whoa! The basement apartment was small, with low ceilings that actually made Marcus feel normal-sized for once. There was a main room with a kitchenette, a bathroom with a shower that actually worked, and a bedroom with a full-sized bed. It smelled a little musty, but it was clean, and most importantly, it was warm. Marcus carried Daniel in first, the boy still sleeping, still sucking his thumb. He laid him gently on the bed, tucking the blankets around him. Then he went back for Emma, who stirred as he lifted her, her eyes fluttering open. "Daddy?" she murmured. "Where are we?" "Somewhere safe, baby," Marcus whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Somewhere warm. Go back to sleep." Emma nestled against his shoulder, trusting him completely, and Marcus felt his heart break and heal at the same time. He carried her inside and laid her next to her brother, then stood there for a long moment just watching them sleep in an actual bed, in an actual room, in an actual home, even if it was only temporary. Sarah had left a note on the small table, along with a key. "Take your time settling in. There's food in the fridge. Help yourself to anything. My number is at the bottom if you need anything. Sleep well. You're safe here." Marcus read the note 3 times, his hands shaking, and then he sat down on the floor and cried, really cried, for the first time since they'd lost everything. He cried for the shame he'd been carrying, for the fear that had been eating him alive, for the exhaustion that had settled into his bones. And he cried with relief, with gratitude, with the overwhelming sensation of being seen as a human being worthy of kindness. When the sun rose the next morning, streaming through the small basement windows, Marcus woke to the sound of laughter. He'd fallen asleep on the floor beside the bed, and now he looked up to see Emma and Daniel jumping on the mattress, their faces bright with joy. "Daddy! Daddy, look!" Emma shouted. "We have a real bed, and there's a bathroom with a door, and I saw a kitchen." Daniel bounced higher, his little face split with a grin. "Is this our new house, Daddy?" Marcus pulled himself up, his body aching from the uncomfortable sleep, but his heart feeling lighter than it had in months. "For now, buddy. For now." Over the next few days, Marcus learned more about Sarah. She was a social worker who'd grown up in foster care, bouncing from home to home, never quite belonging anywhere. She'd bought the building with money she'd saved over years, wanting to create a place where people could find stability, even if just for a moment. She didn't advertise the basement apartment because she kept it for situations like this, for people who'd fallen through the cracks, who needed help but were too proud or too scared to ask. She never made Marcus feel small, in any sense of the word. She spoke to him like an equal, asked his opinion on things, treated him with a respect he'd forgotten he deserved. When she brought down groceries, she didn't act like she was doing him a favor. She'd just say she'd overshopped again, couldn't possibly eat it all herself, would hate to see it go to waste. Marcus started looking for work with renewed energy. He borrowed Sarah's computer to update his resume, to fill out applications, to reach out to everyone he'd ever worked with. He called the warehouse, swallowed his pride, and asked if there were any openings. There weren't, but his old supervisor, a man named Tom, who'd always treated him fairly, said he'd make some calls. Emma started smiling more. Daniel stopped sucking his thumb. They'd play in the small backyard, and Sarah would sometimes come out and push them on the old tire swing she'd hung from the oak tree. She'd help Emma with homework at the kitchen table, her long legs folded awkwardly in the small space, and she'd read Daniel bedtime stories in funny voices that made him giggle. One evening, about 2 weeks after they'd moved in, Sarah knocked on the door. When Marcus opened it, she was holding a stack of papers and wearing an expression he couldn't quite read. "Can we talk?" she asked. Marcus's stomach dropped. This was it. She was going to tell them they had to leave. He'd known it was temporary, but he'd started to hope, started to imagine what it might be like to stay, to build something here. "Of course," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Kids, can you play in the bedroom for a bit?" Emma and Daniel scampered off, sensing the seriousness in the air. Marcus sat down at the small table, and Sarah sat across from him, setting the papers down between them. "I've been thinking," Sarah began, and Marcus braced himself for the rejection he knew was coming. "About this apartment, and about you guys, and about what happens next." Marcus nodded, not trusting himself to speak. "The thing is," Sarah continued, "I really like having you here. The kids are wonderful, and you're a good man, Marcus. I can see how hard you're trying, how much you care about your children. And I've been alone in this building for a long time, and it's been nice. Having people around, having a family around." Marcus frowned, confused. "I don't understand." Sarah pushed the papers toward him. "These are lease papers, but they're different from a normal lease. I'm proposing something unconventional. Instead of rent, what if you helped manage the building? There's always something that needs fixing, someone who needs help with something. And you could help me with the yard work, the maintenance, the day-to-day stuff that I never have time for. In exchange, this apartment is yours. Not just for now, for as long as you need it." Marcus stared at the papers, the words blurring as tears filled his eyes. You're serious?" "Completely serious," Sarah said. "I've seen you fix the leak under the sink and reorganize the storage closet and help Mrs. Patterson on the second floor carry her groceries. You're handy, you're trustworthy, and you're already making this place better. So yes, I'm serious. But Marcus gestured to himself, to his short stature, to all the reasons people had given him over the years for why he wasn't good enough. "I can't reach high places. I need step stools and modifications. You're resourceful," Sarah interrupted firmly. "You figure things out. You don't give up. Those are the qualities I need, not height. Marcus, I'm not offering this because I feel sorry for you. I'm offering it because it's a good arrangement for both of us. You get a home. I get help managing this building. The kids get stability. Everyone wins." Marcus looked down at the papers, at the official-looking type that spelled out a future he hadn't dared to imagine. A future where his children had a home, where he had purpose and dignity, where he didn't have to prove his worth every single day just to survive. "I don't know what to say," he whispered. "Say yes," Sarah said with a smile. "Say yes, and then let's figure out the rest as we go." Marcus looked up at her, this woman who'd appeared in the rain like an angel, who'd seen him at his lowest and offered him a hand up instead of a handout, who'd given him back something he thought he'd lost forever: hope. "Yes," he said, his voice breaking. "Yes, Sarah, thank you, God. Thank you." Sarah reached across the table and squeezed his hand, and Marcus realized that he wasn't alone anymore, that someone believed in him, that he was going to be okay. That night, after Sarah had gone back upstairs and the papers were signed and tucked safely in the drawer, Marcus sat on the edge of the bed where Emma and Daniel slept. He watched their peaceful faces, their chests rising and falling with deep, secure breaths, and he thought about the moment in the car when Emma had asked about going home. He thought about the promise he'd made to Sarah, the woman whose voice he could still hear through the rain, offering him coffee and sandwiches and a chance. She'd whispered kindness when the world had shouted cruelty. She'd seen a father trying his best, not a dwarf who couldn't measure up. Marcus leaned down and kissed Emma's forehead, then Daniel's. "You're waking up in a new home?" he whispered to them, even though they couldn't hear him. "Not just for tonight, but for real. I promised you that night in the car, even though I didn't say it out loud. And I kept that promise. We're home now. We're really home." Months passed, and the seasons changed. Marcus threw himself into managing the building, learning everything he could about plumbing and electrical work and building maintenance. He built himself custom step stools and tools with extended handles, finding creative solutions for every challenge his height presented. The tenants grew to love him, this short man with the huge heart who'd fix their problems at any hour, who'd shovel their walkways in winter and plant flowers in spring, who'd always have time to chat and listen and care. Tom from the warehouse called one day with a lead on a part-time position at a local grocery store. The pay wasn't great, but it was something. Money that Marcus could save, money that made him feel like he was contributing, like he was standing on his own 2 feet, metaphorically speaking. He took the job without hesitation, working nights stocking shelves after the kids were in bed, coming home before they woke up, exhausted but proud. Emma joined the school's art club and started bringing home paintings that Sarah would hang on the refrigerator upstairs, making excuses to come down and admire each new creation. Daniel made friends with the boy who lived on the 3rd floor, and they'd run through the building playing superheroes, their laughter echoing through the halls like music. One evening, almost a year after that rainy night when everything changed, Marcus stood in the backyard watching Emma push Daniel on the tire swing. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and Sarah came out to join him, carrying 2 cups of tea. "Beautiful evening," she said, handing him a cup. "Beautiful life," Marcus replied, taking a sip. "Sarah, I need to tell you something." She looked at him with those kind eyes, waiting. "That night in the car, right before you knocked on my window?" Marcus paused, his throat tight with emotion. "I was thinking about giving up. Not on my kids, never on them, but on myself. I was thinking that maybe they'd be better off without me, that maybe I should call child services, let them go to a family that could actually provide for them. I was at my lowest point, and I couldn't see a way forward." Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't interrupt. "And then you appeared," Marcus continued, "like an answer to a prayer I hadn't even known how to pray. You saw me, Sarah. Not my height, not my circumstances, not my failures. You saw me as a father who loved his kids, as a man who deserved a chance. You gave me that chance, and you gave me back my dignity. You gave my children a home. You gave us a family." A tear slipped down Sarah's cheek. "Marcus, I didn't do anything special. You did everything," Marcus said firmly. "You changed our lives, and I need you to know that I will spend the rest of my life paying that forward. Every person who needs help, every family that's struggling, every kid who needs to know that someone cares. I'm going to be there for them the way you were there for us." Sarah set down her tea and knelt down so she was at Marcus's eye level, something she'd never done before, something that made them truly equal in that moment. "You already do that, Marcus. every single day. You're the heart of this building, of this community. The tenants don't see your height. They see your kindness, your strength, your dedication. They see what I saw that night in the rain, a good man who deserves every bit of happiness he can find. They hugged, this woman and this man who'd found family in the most unexpected way. And Emma and Daniel came running over, wrapping their small arms around both of them, creating a tangle of limbs and love and laughter. That night, after the kids were asleep, Marcus sat at the small table and wrote a letter he'd been meaning to write for months. He wrote to his ex-wife, the woman who'd left him 5 years ago because she couldn't handle being married to a dwarf, couldn't handle the stares and the whispers and the judgment. He'd been angry for so long, bitter about the way she'd abandoned not just him but their children, leaving him to raise them alone. But tonight, he forgave her. He wrote that he understood, that he hoped she'd found happiness, that he wanted her to know Emma and Daniel were thriving, that they were loved beyond measure, that they were home. He didn't mail the letter. He didn't need to. Writing it was enough. Releasing that last bit of resentment, making space for more joy, more gratitude, more love. 2 years after that rainy night, Sarah asked Marcus if he'd be interested in helping her start a nonprofit. She wanted to buy more buildings, create more safe spaces for families in crisis, for people who'd fallen through the cracks, for children who needed stability and love. She wanted Marcus to be the director, to use his experience and his heart and his unique perspective to build something meaningful. Marcus said yes without hesitation. They called it the Shelter Foundation, and it grew faster than either of them had imagined. They secured grants and donations, partnered with local businesses and organizations, and within 5 years, they'd provided housing for over 50 families. Marcus spoke at schools and community centers, sharing his story, letting people see that strength came in all sizes, that dignity wasn't measured in inches or dollars, that everyone deserved a chance to prove their worth. Emma grew into a teenager with her mother's eyes and her father's heart, volunteering at the foundation, painting murals on the buildings they managed, bringing color and hope to spaces that had known too much darkness. Daniel became a quiet but fierce advocate for people with disabilities, standing up to bullies at school, organizing fundraisers, making sure everyone knew that different didn't mean less. And Sarah, beautiful Sarah who'd knocked on a car window in the rain, became the sister Marcus had never had, the Aunt Emma and Daniel adored, the constant presence in their lives that proved family was about choice, not blood. On the 10th anniversary of that night, the foundation threw a celebration. Hundreds of people came, families who'd been helped, volunteers who'd given their time, donors who'd believed in the mission. There were speeches and awards and tears of joy. But the moment that mattered most to Marcus was when he stood at the microphone, looked out at the crowd, and saw his children standing in the front row, holding a banner they'd made themselves. It read, "Our dad is a giant." Marcus smiled through his tears and began to speak. 10 years ago, I was living in my car with my 2 small children. I'd lost everything, my job, my home, my sense of self-worth. I felt invisible, insignificant, like the world had decided I didn't matter because of my size. I was ready to give up. The crowd was silent, hanging on his every word. But then a woman knocked on my car window in the rain. She offered me coffee and sandwiches and a place to stay. She didn't see a dwarf. She didn't see a failure. She saw a father who loved his children, a human being who deserved kindness. And that night, she whispered something to me, not in words, but in actions. She whispered, "You matter. You are worthy. You are not alone." Marcus paused, his eyes finding Sarah in the crowd. She was crying, her hand over her heart. "And I made a promise that night," Marcus continued. "I promised my children, even though they were asleep and couldn't hear me, that they would wake up in a new home, Not just a physical home, but a home built on love and security and hope. And I kept that promise. But more than that, Sarah kept a promise to me, one she didn't even know she was making. She promised that my worth wasn't determined by my height, by my bank account, by what the world thought of me. She promised that I had something valuable to offer, and she gave me the chance to prove it. The crowd erupted in applause, but Marcus held up his hand, asking for quiet. I'm sharing this story not for sympathy, but for hope. Because somewhere out there right now, there's a parent sitting in a car wondering how they're going to feed their children tomorrow. There's a family on the edge of homelessness, too ashamed to ask for help. There's a person who's been told they're not enough, that they don't matter, that they should just give up. And I want them to know what Sarah taught me, that one act of kindness can change everything, that we all have giant hearts, regardless of our size. That home isn't just a place. It's a feeling of belonging, of being seen, of being loved. Marcus looked at his children, at Emma with tears streaming down her face, at Daniel standing tall and proud, and he felt his heart swell with a love so profound it almost hurt. Emma, Daniel, come up here, he said. His children climbed the stairs to the stage, and Marcus pulled them close, wrapping his arms around them as tightly as he could. You are my home, he whispered to them, loud enough for the microphone to catch. You always have been from the moment you were born. And I promise you, now and forever, that I will never stop fighting to give you the life you deserve. You are my giants. You are my everything. The celebration continued long into the night, but eventually Marcus found himself standing alone in the backyard of the building where it all began, looking up at the stars. Sarah joined him, as he'd known she would, carrying 2 cups of tea, as she always did. You did it, she said softly. You kept your promise. Marcus nodded, accepting the tea. We did it. You and me and everyone who believed this crazy idea could work. We built something real, Sarah. We built homes. We built hope. We built family, Sarah added, and they clinked their cups together in a quiet toast to the journey, to the rain, to the moment everything changed. As Marcus drove home that night, Emma and Daniel asleep in the back seat, he passed by the spot where he'd parked his car 10 years ago. He slowed down, looking at the familiar street light, the overhang that had provided minimal protection from the rain, the apartment building that had become his salvation. And he whispered into the darkness, a message to anyone who might need to hear it, to anyone sitting in their car right now, wondering if tomorrow would ever come. Hold on. Help is coming. You are not alone, and I promise you, you will wake up in a new home. Maybe not tonight, maybe not tomorrow, but soon, because there are people in this world who care, who see you, who believe you matter. I'm one of them, and I'm never going to stop fighting to make sure everyone has a place to call home. He drove on, toward the apartment that had become a house, that had become a home, that had become the foundation for a family built not on blood, but on choice, on love, on the unshakable belief that everyone deserves a second chance. And as he carried his sleeping children inside, tucking them into their beds with a kiss on each forehead, Marcus whispered one more promise, the same one he'd made 10 years ago. You're waking up in a new home. Not just today, but every day for the rest of your lives, because home is wherever we are together, and I will never, ever let you forget how deeply you are loved. Hey, if this story touched your heart, I want to hear from you in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from, what part of this journey moved you the most. Was it that moment in the rain? The promise Marcus made to his kids? The way Sarah saw beyond the surface to the man underneath? Your thoughts mean everything to us, and they help us understand what stories resonate with you, what makes you feel something real. And if you felt something while reading this, if Marcus and Emma and Daniel and Sarah became real people to you for these few minutes, then please hit that like button. It seems like such a small thing, but it makes a huge difference. It tells us that these stories matter, that they're reaching people, that they're making an impact. It helps the channel grow so we can keep bringing you more stories like this, stories about hope and resilience and the power of human kindness. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're all looking for, isn't it? Connection, understanding, the reminder that we're not alone, that our struggles matter, that there's always a chance for things to get better. Marcus's story is fictional, but the emotions, the challenges, the triumphs, they're real. They happen every day to real people who are fighting real battles, trying to make it through one more day, one more hour, one more moment. So thank you for being here. Thank you for reading. Thank you for caring. Drop that comment, hit that like, and remember, you matter, your story matters, and there's always hope, even on the darkest, rainiest nights. Until next time, keep believing in the power of kindness. Keep believing in second chances. Keep believing that we all have giant hearts, no matter our size.